Wanted to welcome you to our brand new webinar series. In this webinar, we're going to be covering managing your practice's revenue cycle in 2015, setting goals and expectations. My name is John Vigiano, and I'll be introducing Tim Buckles, our VP of Operations here. We want to invite people to send questions that they may have during the presentation to my email address. That's john@simonsagency.com. And I'll be tallying those up, and we'll address them towards the end of the presentation. At this time, I'd like to introduce our presenter, Timothy Buckles, VP of Operations here at Simon's Agency. Tim's been here 10 years, and he has a lot of experience, 3 decades of experience with all types of companies doing revenue cycle management. His experience includes revenue cycle management, industry best practices, strategizing and planning, and Tim also owns a wine shop, so he is our resident expert in wine strategy and pairing. So we will take some wine questions at the end as well, if anybody has interest. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Tim now, and thank you for joining us.
Thanks, John. Welcome, everybody. I appreciate you guys calling in on this. Today I'm going to keep this to probably about 30 minutes or so, and really what we wanted to do is really set up a 3-part series that built off of the previous webinar. And what I'd like to be able to kind of do with you is kind of introduce you to kind of the planning life cycle that we go through over here at Simon's. And really the main goal is to present a case study with real life examples, let you know things that we've tried, things that we haven't tried, what works, and what we've found to be very effective. What I plan on doing is really outlining an approach with tools and tactics on how we implemented a lot of these types of strategies based on best practices of what we found in the industry. And I kind of practice a planning life cycle approach that I learned from Dale Carnegie early on in my career. So where I was going was the planning life cycle is really a combination of taking a look at how things are in your organization today, and what do they look like going into the future, and how do you kind of get there, how do you kind of figure that out. And so John, if you want to go to the next slide, we'll talk about what that approach is. And so what we do as an exercise on an annual basis is you want to take a look at where your organization is and where the industry is going. And so what I did is we take a look at industry sources, and that's everything from national conferences, and we just got back down at the HFMA conference over in Orlando, Florida, and it was about a week conference down there. And they had a lot of high-level industry information about where the medical field's going across the industry. They had some presentations from healthcare futurists, and I'm more than happy to send that presentation over to you. It was probably about a 60-slide presentation that we saw out there that really talked about trends that they saw in the healthcare industry, but basically boils down to really these 4 points that I kind of put up here on the slide that talks about analytics and technology, organizational effectiveness, cost management, and transparency. And those were the core tenets that I kind of heard, not only coming out of the HFMA conference that was talking to mainly medical practices and hospitals that could range anywhere between $500 million to the $1 billion level in the industry, but really a good global picture about what's going on in the U.S. And then on top of that, spent a lot of time looking at Google and Apple and where their conferences were going in terms of where they're taking really the United States and the world in terms of technology over the next 3, 5, 10 years. And on top of that, we also spent a lot of time with our vendors and our clients trying to figure out what are their needs and what are their expectations kind of going forward. And basically we take all of those components and we use that to really kind of set our overall goals and expectations in each category. And so what we're going to do is we're going to kind of walk through each one of those, and I'm going to talk you through what our approach was. I'm going to talk to you about a couple of real-life examples about what we did as an organization, what we found to be very effective, and hopefully you'll find that some of these things would be effective internally within your own practices as well. So analytics and technology. So you've got everything from next generation data to predictive analytics to automation. And so, some of the things that we were hearing in the healthcare industry for next generation data, they're talking about, websites that are out there that are going to allow patients to actually start shopping for services out there now. And that if they have to go, and the example I seem to see over and over again was, hip replacement surgery, they would be able to shop that out and figure out, where could they go to an entity, for the most cost-effective treatment. Now, there's a lot of liabilities in that, just a cost doesn't necessarily translate to treatment. But, one of the trends that they were saying is they want patients or prospective patients to be able to start shopping their medical, not just, their healthcare packages that cover them, but also the places that are actually implementing that. Predictive analytics, they were talking a lot about introducing that within the hospitals. And then automation. And so I'm going to flip it around a little bit more on our side about how that kind of translated over to me, since we do more on the collection side. Is we take a look at what kind of data do we have in terms of market data and internal data, and what we try to do is say, based on the things that we're seeing in terms of trends, based on the things that we're doing in terms of operations, is there anything that we can pull out of it that allows us to make our organization better? And so we have, analysis paralysis almost, in terms of, we have more data than what you could possibly use within your organization. I find that most organizations have that same thing. But how you can pull that out, how you can synthesize that data becomes very important, because what we found out of it is that we basically, found that we were treating all patients equally coming over here for collections. And one of the things that we found out is, as we layered in outside data and inside data within our organization, we found out that the one approach for everyone really needed to move into breaking into groups and workflows within our organization. And that's what, we went from a next generation data to predictive analytics, which really gets into profiling, which allowed us to get into workflow, and attacking each one of those workflows differently to maximize, our time, effort, and energy to maximize revenue. And then from there, we define systems and reporting to help support that on our automation. So what we basically found out is that if I took a look at our entire revenue stream coming in, what we found out is that when we went through that profiling of under the predictive analytics piece, we found out that 80% of our revenue was generated by accounts that we would rank a 1 or a 2. So one of the things that we did internally is we actually developed a ranking system of all the things that come into our company, and we ranked it 1 through 5. And what we found is that the first two numbers, the 1s and the 2s, really became more of the maximum part of our revenue that was generated every day. And so how we approached those accounts versus accounts that were profiling as 3s, 4s, and 5s, each one of those started developing different workflows, because we found certain ones were more effective than others. And it's more about how do you spend your time, how you spend your energy on a given day when your resource is time. And if you only have X amount of hours in the day, how do you attack, how do you approach each one of those types of things? The other part that we saw is that we know that our ranks 1s and 2s generate 80% of our income. Well, we also turned around and said that, 80% of that revenue was for accounts that have been with us for less than 18 months. And so now I can take, the outside next generation data, leverage some analytics around it, and say, now I can go ahead and start creating organizational effectiveness within my own teams, and actually got to translate into cost management in terms of benefits for us as well. And so we found that, now I have kind of a profile and approach, and so now I can go ahead and start taking a look at different tactics and techniques here. So then what we did is we went in and we said, okay, let's take a look at the job functions within our company. And, we sat down and, I'll give you an example. We sat down with our administration area and we said, okay, what are all the different tasks and all the different things that you have driving you today, and how can we leverage that into what we found out in terms of how we know who has a higher propensity to pay and who doesn't. And so what we did is we actually developed different streams of workflow based on the job functions, and we sat down and we created basically what we call SLAs, or service level agreements, within each of those. And it was really more setting up kind of expectations about how long do different things kind of take within the organization. And if they're taking longer than that, then is someone not being as effective as they possibly can? And if they aren't, or if they are, then can we leverage technology behind it to go ahead and help it make it even more effective? And so what we found out is as we were going through identifying workflow and job functions within areas, we sat down and said, okay, what are the things that take to finish that and how long do they take? And as you go through that, you find a lot of redundancy. You find people, like 2 or 3 people that may be doing the exact same job. And so we were able to streamline some of those types of things. We found out that how someone approached doing a certain task could have been easily automated, and it took an 8-hour task and brought it down to 30 minutes. So we found a lot of those types of things. And then the other part of it is we set standards on our service level agreements that said, here's the expectation or turnaround time that when a file comes in, what's the expectation of us to be able to get it loaded and be able to report back to our clients that it's in the system, that it's accurate, that it's the number of accounts that they sent, and it's the dollar amounts that came in. Everything from how placements come in to how we trace the files to how we basically link those files together within our internal systems to how we interact with our clients going all the way across the board. We found it a very effective exercise to go through this because then everyone sits there and says, okay, we know what the standards are, so if we're deviating off of those, we can figure out what we got to find out that's causing us to be delayed or that to be inaccurate. And so what we found is that from a process improvement, it balanced out workload within the department. We were able to leverage technology to make it much more effective, and we reduced a lot of duplication. So in one piece of the organizational effectiveness of that puzzle, that's what we kind of went through and did. One of the things that we've seen as our organization keeps growing, and you'll see that within your own organizations, is that in the past you'd find one person that wore a lot of hats that did a lot of different tasks. And what's happening is now you're finding more defined roles. And the nice part about that is you gain levels of expertise, but now you risk communication and clarity. And so the one person that used to do 7 or 8 tasks could actually link all those up in their mind about the order and the flow and what worked and what didn't work. And eventually those tasks become too big and you have to start adding people into it, or you have to add in technology. And when you start adding in multiple layers there, now you have the ability to find risk of people not being as effective. And so the role of really the management piece of that is to make sure that you're always providing clarity and communication about how things work and feel. And that's where those service level agreements really kind of come in, is that it helps you identify as you throw a new body or a new person into it to try and make something more effective. Can you measure that and make sure that it's staying on task and on target? So from a cost management standpoint, here's the other piece that we spend a lot of time doing is we take a look at our P&L, and we want to make sure that there's an annual review that we go through, and we take a look at vendors, and we take a look at what are their costs, and what do we spend on them last year, what do we spend on this year, do those have the ability to get renegotiated? And so for a lot of the people that we have on the call today, think about it in terms of the vendors that you deal with and the supply chain management that comes in here. And this was another piece or target that was part of the HFMA conference was, you should be challenging your business partners to be better and better every single year. And so do they add more value, or do they come back and give you a lower rate? And so you can go back and try and push and negotiate both those pieces to make sure that you're getting the best service for your company and your organization. And so as we take a look at it, I take a look at how does the cost of my dialer system today work with the capabilities and trends that I'm seeing that the industry may need to be able to do. There's a lot of changes that are going on in FDCPA and the TCPA client compliance, and we want to make sure that based on those changes, the vendors we're using, are they compliant with that, and are they going to be able to stay compliant, and are they going to be our future partners over the next 1, 3, 5 years. You want to take a look at some of the technologies that are out there and stuff, but everything from dialers, automated dialers, to skip tracing, to phone systems, internet service providers. What we found out is that over the last year or so, we've met with a lot of phone vendors and we've met with a lot of technology, and it's all shifting and changing. And so based on things that we were seeing with Google and Apple, they're not going to be changing 5, 10 years from now. They're going to be changing over the next 1 to 3 years. And so, we're making decisions as an organization about Should we be more cloud-based or should we be more brick and mortar based, or is there a blend between the two? What does that look and feel like, and what's the migration? Something as simple as a phone system isn't really a simple phone system anymore. From picking up the phone to be able to call, to the reporting capabilities, to call flow as it goes through your organization, how it leverages automation within your organization, are all become very important pieces. And so, that's kind of the first piece of that cost management, is identifying, where's your biggest line items and where do you have the ability to go back and have conversations. Second piece of the cost management is, in the technology. And, it's identifying the job functions by department, but those key questions about, do I go to the cloud or do I, have hard brick and mortar equipment? So in a day where we used to have physical servers in the building, do those servers now live on the cloud? And does that information live up on the cloud? And so what does your ITIS department look like today versus tomorrow? And today I might need a huge staff of ITIS people that do all my programming and support all my technology. And in the future, it may live on the cloud, and you let Google or you let Apple support all that for you, where you can go ahead and spend more time defining what you need versus actually trying to figure it out and implement it on your own. And so it really boils down to how big is the organization, what does your infrastructure look like? And so those are all kind of key questions that have to tie to that very beginning slide that we talked about of where is the industry today, where is it going to be tomorrow, and where do you really need to be over the next 1, 3, 5 years from now? And that also defines your staffing. What are the new skills that are going to be out there? What are the new inflection points of growth that are out there? So we sit back and we take a look at this whole piece, and I sit here and say, okay, I need to have technology, but how's my technology going to support the organization about where we need to go? And how do we support what our client needs are? And how do we make sure that we service the accounts? And how do we make sure that we're maximizing our staff? And how do you pull all that together to make it one cohesive strategy so that's what you're working towards over the next 1, 3, 5 years? And so, we'll take a look at that, and I'll lay all those things out, and we'll talk about, what is the associated dollars that we think that we're going to be able to leverage. So from a client perspective, when we went ahead and implemented the analytics that told us that when they send over 1,000 people to be worked on, to see if we can get them to come to terms for payment, we found out that by using that profiling piece or that predictive analytics, it told us who has the highest propensity to pay. And so what that translates into is more dollars coming in that go directly over to our clients a lot faster. So we found probably on the neighborhood of 40 to 50% improvement over the monies that we had been giving them before we actually implemented that process. And it really boils down to how do you break out workflows within strategy. So it's not only who has the highest propensity to pay, but it's also looking at your internal dynamics of your staffing, saying, who should be working different workflows. So do you set up people that work certain balances? Do you work certain types of medical, or do you work certain types of we have a lot of different people in terms of the commercial side too. So do you allocate certain people just dedicated to commercial? How do you handle people that have now passed away and work that into your overall workflow? So when I go through and I take a look at our performance ROI, I take a look at how are we performing for our clients, how are we performing across our departments and purchase services, and you look at the cost savings to really help define what works for you and what doesn't, where you want to prioritize your time, effort, and energy. So some of the feedback that we got back is we do external evaluations and measurements, because honestly, if we go through the effort of doing all this and our clients and our vendors and our business partners don't see a difference, then honestly it really doesn't help us a whole lot. And so some of the things that you see up here is that, saying that, we've gotten from current clients saying that our agency is returning 5 times what the previous company did. And part of that is how we leverage all those tenants that I just kind of talked through. It's, where do we need to be? What do we need to do to support our client base and our vendor base and our business partners? And, what's it going to take to get there? And what do I need to do from a staffing and process improvement side? What do I need to do from a technology side? And how do I tie that stuff together? The other statement you see up there is your agency has done more in a couple of months than the other agency did in 2 years. So a lot of this is really, speed to market, speed to execution, and leveraging things out there. And one of the common things I heard over and over again at the HFMA conference down in Florida for medical was, they're concerned about, price value for the patients that are coming in and being treated. And, And one of the things I'd like everyone to kind of get out of this is that the tenets I'm showing up here and the approaches that we're showing you is things that will translate not only with us, but it should translate with your organizations as well. So a lot of very similar presentations that were with hospital groups and billing agencies and those types of things that were out there. And they were showing how they implemented these types of things and what types of changes that they were getting. And it was just very effective and very eye-opening for us. Kind of the last piece of this is really transparency. And one of the industry trends that we saw was, we not only heard from our clients about where we needed to be, we knew we had to be more cost effective, we knew we had to provide more for less, we needed to be able to provide better results and provide them faster. The other part was transparency, is that they wanted to know on a more real-time basis what's going on with their accounts. And they wanted to know how are they going to get that and how is it going to be implemented. And so from us, what we had to do is I'm a big follower of the rule of 3 to 5. So I like taking a look at solutions in terms of 3 to 5 different possibilities and kind of vetting all 3 to 5 of those out and making sure that you can see which one's going to be the best for your organization. So from a technology standpoint, I was very concerned about our solution had to make sure that from a technology, does it meet our platform needs? Is it ease of installation? And what was the core capabilities? Does it match up to everything else that we're trying to do in our organization? From a reporting standpoint, what were our clients and our business associates and our business partners asking for? And does it meet those core needs? Was it flexible enough? And does it have the ability to scale? And then the last piece of it is execution, both internally and externally. And so we landed on a system called CAW, and it's a client access web, and it was browser based. It basically can use any browser that's out there. So if you're on Explorer, you can go up to Explorer, you can go to the URL and basically put in your login and password, and you've got visibility to all your information that's over here with the company. And you can take a look and slice it and dice it any way that you want. There's some canned reporting that tells you everything from confirmation reports about what was placed to how we're performing over different slices of time, and allows you to export that data into your own system so that if you need to tailor a little bit more for your own reporting, you'd have the ability to do that as well. So it really addressed the ability for the super user and the people that weren't as versed on the technology to really meet both those audiences, that allowed them to get real-time information versus always trying to get a hold of someone here at the company. And so we wanted to make sure that they had the ability to get that and that it was immediate and it was close. So that piece we thought was a good win-win for everybody, that allowed us to give information back to our clients much more timely, based on whenever they needed it. That if they were working at 12 o'clock at night, they'd be able to get access to the information. If they wanted it first thing in the morning, they'd have access to it as well. So John, you want to finish up with a couple things here?
Sure. So echoing Tim's point, we now give our clients a statistical view of their accounts, which allows our sales staff to really get back to selling and marketing, as opposed to dealing with some of the client relations pieces. And we can kind of move that back over to the admin department, who's better suited to deal with those. So that was one of the great benefits of the CAW system as far as my department went for Simons. So at this point, that's pretty much our presentation for today. I didn't get any questions via email, but we certainly would be happy to open it up if anybody has any questions. You can ask them now, or you could always feel free to email me separately. There's information at the bottom of the slide here on all the places you can find us, whether you want to give us a call or send me an email, or find us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Google Plus as well. We do have a blog as well, attorneyredtoblack.com, where we are updating this kind of information and putting up pieces that really are centered around RCM and how our process can reflect upon yours and help yours. And we're always open to feedback. If nobody has any questions, we just want to remind you that the next webinar is next Wednesday, July 22nd at 1 p.m., where we'll be talking about patient negotiations, staff training, and preparation with regard to that.